Sup? Yeah, check this out. My new look. My first haircut since shaving my head almost 4 months ago. Anyway, um, what I want to talk about is I'm gonna try and keep this as brief as possible because I don't have a lot of time. But I just thought I'd talk about some of my favorite years in music. You know, especially since I've been alive, and well, even before that, just going by what I've heard and the stuff that I've read. But anyway, first things first, let's see. Now, I was born in 1984, and a lot of people say that that was the best year of the 80s for music. Yeah, if you were into like Prince or Madonna or um, whatever else was popular at the time, or if you're into maybe a little bit crazier stuff like Motley Crue. I mean, they didn't put out an album that year, but still, they were pretty big then. No, my favorite, and you're gonna notice a theme here. My favorite year in music from the 1980s would have to be 1986. Um, I was far too young to actually be aware of the music at that time, but a lot of really good albums came out that year. Um, there was, I mean, it was a great year for heavy metal, a great year, and even white boy rap. I mean, Beastie Boys, License to Ill, that came out 1986. Three Jewish white boys from New York just burst onto the scene, you know, tore shit up. And they had a very punk rock influenced sound because they were a punk rock band first before they became a rap group. But then you also had like in metal you had Metallica, Master of Puppets, Slayer, Rain and Blood. You had Megadeth, Peace Sells But Who's Buying, and you had other really good albums like Doomsday for the Deceiver from Flotsam and Jetsam and Voivod's Roar album. Um, all really good albums. I would recommend any one of those to anyone who's just getting into metal music. And that's, let's see, my favorite year for music in the 1990s would have to be 1996. Now, that's when gangster rap was at its peak, and there's a whole Biggie Tupac thing going on. Even though I didn't really listen to either one of them, but it's like grunge was really like was on its downward slide. It was in popularity. It was, I mean, that was the year that Soundgarden would release their last proper album before breaking up and going on hiatus for 16 some odd years. And then you had Alice in Chains do their Unplugged album, which That was Lane Staley's last live performance with the band. Pearl Jam, pretty much the only one of the big four in grunge that, were still chugging at that point. I mean, Alice in Chains reformed in the last decade with a new singer, but Pearl Jam is the only one that's been consistent, and they released the No Code album in 1996. That was a pretty good album. And it was like 1995, 1996. One of the big bands at the time was actually called the Presidents of the United States of America. When I was like 11, 12 years old, I thought they were the best freaking band ever. And then a friend of mine introduced me to the musical parody stylings of Weird Al Yankovic. My first taste of his stuff was his album Bad Hair Day, which was released in 1996. And that stuff was hilarious. Very hilarious to a 12-year-old. I mean, I was smart enough to understand some of the adult themes in his songs, although he wasn't like graphic or explicit. He was just mature enough. Now let's see. For the aughts, the last decade, my favorite year for music would have to be. You think I'm going to say 2006, but no. It was actually 2005. You had Coheed and Cambria released their third album, Good Morning Apollo, and Volume 1. And that's about the only Coheed album I still put on repeat to this day, because the songs are so good. I mean, the biggest single from that album was Welcome Home, not to be confused with Metallica's Welcome Home Sanitarium. But yeah, that album, it just, I find myself singing along to just about every song every time I hear it. I mean, earlier today I was listening to like track 14 off of that album, which is the Willing Well Part 3. I forget the rest of it. But anyway, yeah. You not only had Coheed and Cambria, but you had a lot of emo and pop punk came out that year. Yeah, because there was a Story of the Year with In the Wake of Determination. That's a good album. I still listen to that one. And I was going through like a bit of a rap phase. Like I listened to a lot of Atmosphere, and they released an album in 2005, which was really good. Just a second while you can't imagine how much fun we're having. That was the name of the album. Really good stuff from an independent rap label, because that's the only good rap there is these days, is the underground independent stuff. And I'd say, I mean, we're still early into the 2010s here, but I think last year, 2012, has was the best year so far this decade. I mean, you had Testament's most recent album that came out, Dark Roots of Earth. That was my most anticipated release last year, and I bought that, and I rocked the hell out to it. Let me tell you. Uh, so yeah, I just let's see. I was gonna mention, music from before I was born. So let's see. The 70s, it's hard to pick a year because a lot of great bands were prolific and released classic albums in that decade. And, I can hear why they're. I'm going to go and say 1974 was a good year because I think that was the year that Black Sabbath, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, was released stateside. It was recorded in 1973 and released in the UK in 73. Um, yeah, that's a good album. I always listen to that one. Um, you gotta love remastered CDs, let me tell you. And there's a Judas Priest debut album from 1974, Rock-a-Rolla. Wow. I mean, it is radically different from what Judas Priest would become and what they still are, since the 80s. Now, I can't, yeah, I can't really get into the stuff from the 80s that Judas Priest did because their first five albums released in the latter half of the 1970s, those are the classics. Those are the really good albums. You know, uh, fun fact: three of the songs that wound up on Sad Wings of Destiny, their next album, were supposed to have been included on Rock-a-Rolla, but I guess contracts or some kind of dispute with the record company led to them being kept off of that album and then saved for the next one. And, you know, it was. I just liked that year in music because, you know, I think anywhere between 74 and 77, lots of great bands put out great albums. So, that's pretty much where I'm going to end this. I was just thinking about this topic while I was out running errands this morning, and I had to do a video on it, so that's it.